Hello everyone, welcome to week number 2 in Bio 120. We've started off our course, you've got your discussion board postings in, you've done your first journal assignment. Let's see what we've got going on this week. So last week we took a look at the scientific method, and I explained in the video that it's not just so simple and straightforward like it was when you took science in the 7th grade. You know, there's more to it than that. There's a tremendous amount of background research that you have to do. You have to set up a testable hypothesis, and you have to test it over and over and over and over and over again. And not just once, not just twice, 3 times. No, you do it over and over and over again until you're sure that you're getting reliable results every single time. And then you can figure out what it means. And then you have to interpret those results based on what you already know from everything that's gone on before you in science. You have to make predictions about what's going to happen in the future. You have to come up with questions that you would ask in the future about this particular problem. And then, of course, you would continue on with your research if you could, if you had funding for that. And then you turn in this work to a journal to be published, and then there's lots of peer review that happens. There's peer review that happens before you send off any of your work, because you do this with any of your colleagues that are around and colleagues that you value their insight into work like this. So you run it by everybody that you can, then you send it into the publication, and you have peer review there by the editors that are there, and they will send you feedback for sure. And then once it's published, it's out there for the whole world to see, and everybody can critique it. Now we have a better understanding of this, especially with social media. Once you put something out there, you're open, right? You're open for criticism. And that's what happens in science too. That's part of the peer review process. So that's the scientific method. We talked about the characteristics of life, like homeostasis, like metabolism, which is all about chemistry that happens in organisms, like evolution, like reproduction, right? We went through all of those. And people have different lists of these characteristics of life. I've seen 4 characteristics, 8 characteristics, 9 characteristics, you know. It just depends on how you lump them together, really. But they're all the same basic ones. So we learned about characteristics of life, because what is biology but the study of life? All right. So this week, what do we have going on? First of all, skim the chapters 2 and 3 in your textbook. And I don't know if you really know what skim means, but skim means to just quickly go through the chapters, look at the headings, glance down through the material to see what is there so that you can refer back to it. Plus, if you're using this online version, realize that you can do a search for a whole bunch of terms. You can put a whole bunch of terms together, and like functions of macromolecules. Type that in, see what you come up with. So there's great searching capabilities of this online textbook. So skim through chapters 2 and 3, which are about inorganic molecules, and those just mean, organic just means molecules that are found in organisms, right? Things that are alive. Inorganic, not living. Yep, that's all that means. Notice some particular sections, the section on water, because you're going to be discussing why water is so important to life. That is tremendously important. Water is found in every single cell that there is. Every cell that has ever been, ever will be, water's in it. Yeah, so that tells you water has to be extremely important. So what is it about water? Why can't we use something else besides water? So take a look at that. Carbon. Why is carbon the element of life? This is very important this week too. So the importance of carbon is that it can form 4 bonds with other atoms and molecules. And that's really the maximum number that you can get with atoms. 4 bonds. And this means that carbon can be the backbone of very complex, very large macromolecules that organisms need in order to function. So take a look at that. And then the 4 groups of organic molecules, carbohydrates. Now you know these because you know them from your everyday lives, right? Carbs. What do carbs include? Sugar, starches, right? Yeah. So what are their functions? Well, you already know energy. They're food sources, absolutely. Some of them are also structural. So take a look at your functions of the carbohydrates. Lipids. Lipids are very important. These are fats, oils, and waxes. The most important characteristic that they have is that they are hydrophobic. They are water-fearing. They don't mix with water. And you know this, right? When you try to mix oil with water, the oil separates out from the water. They don't mix. And so this is important. This is an important characteristic of it. In fact, phospholipids are the molecules that make up all membranes. And that is that barrier between the watery inside of the cell and the watery outside environment. Why do they work? Because they're hydrophobic. Yep. Proteins. Most proteins in cells are enzymes. Enzymes are proteins that do work. They carry out chemical reactions. So proteins are very important. There are also proteins that are structural. There are also proteins that are hormones. So proteins, take a look at those. And then finally, the nucleic acids, DNA, RNA. You know those are 2 molecules of heredity, right? They help pass along traits into the next generations. But there are also some other ones like ATP, adenosine triphosphate. This is a nucleotide, which is a component of nucleic acids. And ATP is the energy molecule of life. It's very important for providing fuel for all the biochemistry that happens, or almost all the biochemistry that happens in cells. There are also a couple that are similar, but ATP is the main one. All right, another thing that's very important this week is to read and look at carefully the Module 2 overview. There's a great table in there that tells you the functions of all of these organic molecules, and that means you don't have to spend a tremendous amount of time in Chapter 3 going through all of that information in the textbook because it's already written out for you. All right. So that's the material to cover, but what are your assignments? You've got discussion board postings this week. Remember, your initial post is due by Thursday evening before midnight. The 2 response posts are due by Sunday before midnight. Your initial post is about the importance of macromolecules in cells. So why do you have to have all those carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids in cells? Why do you need water in cells? See, I told you that that was going to be important. And then also answer the question, if somebody put this hypothetical to you, food plus water plus factor X equals life. So what would you say factor X was? Let's see what you can come up with. This is going to be interesting. We'll have some good discussions about old factor X. Your 2 response posts. You need to look at food labels, right? Look at food labels. See what's contained on the food label. Carbohydrates, check. Fats, that's what it will say instead of lipids. Check. Proteins, check. Nucleic acids, You ever seen that on a food label? I don't think so. Why not? It's important to look at the structure of a nucleotide. Go back to that chapter 3. Look up nucleotide. Look at the structure of a nucleotide and figure out why you probably are not seeing nucleic acids on food labels. Maybe there's a reason we don't have to put that on there. All right, and then you have a journal entry, journal assignment on the properties of carbon. I already talked about that, didn't I? There's 4 bonds. Yep. And the link between fossil fuels and carbon dioxide. and the whole link, right? So carbon is the element of life. Carbon is used to make what? The organic molecules, right? Organic molecules make up organisms. So what are fossil fuels? Might be dead, decayed organisms that have accumulated over millions of years under pressure and heat. And then what's that connection to carbon dioxide that's found in excessive amounts in our atmosphere now? So that's your journal entry. And then also watch Reliable Sources video and look at the Shapiro Library website, because you're going to start doing your research this week. On what? On your final project. So you're going to have a project that you're going to work on all term long, and at the very end of this, you're going to make a PowerPoint presentation or slide presentation. There are lots of ways that you can make slides, but PowerPoint's the most common. So, but you can use Canva, you can use Google Slides, there are all kinds of ways, but PowerPoint is usual. So you're going to make a PowerPoint presentation about your final project, which I'm going to cover on my next slide. In order to do this, you're going to have to do some research. And that's why you need to watch that Reliable Sources, because if you use just any old thing that pops up when you do a Google search, you are going to be in big trouble, because they will not be reliable. That's whoever's paying the most money to get at the top of the search bar, right? So take a look at that, and take a look at the Shapiro Library website if you haven't used that yet. We have a tremendous resource in that Shapiro Library. There are so many articles that we can get, full text articles on. Do you know how much that would cost out there in the world just to buy one article? Yeah, but we have access to so many because our library is so huge. So take a look at the library's website, and take a look at the search engine and see how you do the searches and what comes up when you type in terms. All right, and then be looking at your final project topics, which I've listed over here. Let me move my old face out of the way a little bit over here. There we go. You're going to look at these and pick one, right? You'll need to have one chosen by next week. And you're going to start discussing it in the next week. So you got to pick one this week and start your research this week. So here's a choice of them over here. Population ecology. So like if you're a naturalist, if you work for the Park Service, something like that, you will be studying population ecology. So a population is members of the same species that live together in a particular place at a particular time. Now, the area can be huge, like the world, or it can be something tiny, 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 like on the edges of a stream that's being polluted or something like that. So population ecology. So for example, in South Carolina, the Department of Natural Resources keeps track of deer populations through hunters. They do counts of feral hogs because they are so destructive. What else do they count? Turkeys, quails, if they can find any. We've been examining bald eagle populations, and then all kinds of plants too. I mean, this is not just animals. So population ecology is important. Air pollution, water pollution. You'd think that by now we would have all this figured out and we wouldn't have all this pollution, but unfortunately we still do. Air pollution and its prevalence was just shocking to look at during COVID when everything was shut down. The air spaces above large cities just completely cleared up when we weren't driving. And this includes places like Mexico City that has a tremendous amount of air pollution. And that's because of the geography of that location is down in a bowl, and so all the air pollution collects. And there are so many people that live in that area. And during COVID, when we didn't have all the driving that was going on, the air cleared up. Yeah. So air pollution, water pollution. Maybe you have a particular problem in your area. Like I have a lake that's very near me, that's within a couple of miles of me, that during the summer, it's basically shut down for parts of the summer to swimming because the bacterial count goes up too high. That's a type of water pollution. Energy crisis and alternative sources of energy. Say you're interested in solar panels. Go for it. You can do a project on that. Eutrophication is the aging out of bodies of water, and this also includes algal blooms, which are a problem. Sometimes you hear these called red tides, which are tremendously important and devastating to bodies of water where you find red tides and algal blooms. So eutrophication is a good one. Genetic modification. There's all kinds of ways that we can look at this. Can we genetically modify human beings right now? No, we cannot. We cannot fiddle around with embryos. This is not allowed in any country in this world right now because we don't know how to do it correctly, and we can't do that yet. Now, we can do this in animal models, and we have done this in plants for a long time. You might want to go with genetically modified organisms, GMOs, that you hear about and that you see on food labels so many times. No GMOs. Ooh, that's scary. Okay, maybe you better look up some information about GMOs because almost every corn product in the world is a GMO. Soybeans, pretty much. Excuse me. Just take a look at different crops, and you'll be shocked at how many of them are genetically modified. So this doesn't mean that the foods are frankenfoods like some people make them out to be. That's crazy. If you're a company like Monsanto that wants to develop a new GMO, you might put in a gene that makes it more resistant to a particular species, a caterpillar that usually eats this crop and damages it, right? So they'll put in a single gene. This is not, they're starting from scratch. They're just putting in new traits into these crop plants. And we can also do this with livestock to genetically modify them. So there's an example. Deforestation. What is it with us? We love to cut down a tree. I have so much building going on around my area, which is around Charlotte, North Carolina. I live in South Carolina, but that's right across the border. There's so much building going on, so much expansion of neighborhoods and the suburbs. And we will cut down every single last tree or die to build a subdivision. Deforestation. Of course, we have a tremendous problem in the Amazonian rainforest, and this is devastating to the ecosystems there. So there are lots of different ways to look at that. Biodiversity, endangered species. Biodiversity is just all the different species that make up a healthy ecosystem, and each one fills a niche and has a role in that ecosystem. And what happens if we lose species out of an ecosystem? Bad things usually happen. And some of these species can become endangered. If I were you, I would choose either biodiversity or endangered species because there's plenty of endangered species. In fact, 2 slides back, I have a slide of 2 of the 10 white rhinos left in the world. These are in, Zambia, and they are under armed guard 24 hours a day in an area that is controlled so that poachers don't get to them. There are only 10. 2 of those are babies. So they only had 8 last year, I guess it was. Now there are 10. And one of those is the tiniest baby. It was only a month old back in August. That's an endangered species if there are only 10 of them left in the whole world. Global warming, climate change, everybody's heard of these. What's the cause of this? Usually and mostly burning fossil fuels. So you can take a look at that. Waste management and how we don't do a very good job with this. Yeah, we make so much waste and so much plastic waste. Or you could choose microplastics because They've been in the news a lot, and people think, well, we're getting them everywhere. Yeah, we're probably getting them into our bodies because we sure have found them in other animals. So plastic pollution, microplastics, that's an aspect of waste management. Landfills, leaking landfills. Yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you could look at that. Or a topic of your choice. It has to be biology related, of course. Right? Don't pick a sociology project. No, that's not biology. And if you want to choose something different from any of these, you have to ask me, and I have to prove it. And I have been known to say, during that old week 3, when I see what I get, I'll say, nope, that is not going to work for me. That does not have anything to do with biology. It might be some biology that has to do with your major, for example, if you're a psych major. And we can discuss that, but you have to run it past me so that I can make sure that it's biology related. All right, and oh, here I go again with my slides. I'm so bad about this. All right, here we go. Oh, that's a fish eagle that I saw in Africa. I usually have, at this point in the presentation, a tip of the week or tips of the week to help you with your studying, to help you get your schoolwork done. Jot down a list, even if it's on a little Post-it note. You know, I got Post-it notes everywhere. Even though I work on a computer. Jot down a list, just a simple little list of things to answer for each assignment so that you don't miss anything. You remember back to the discussion board where you had to tell why macromolecules are important in cells, why water is important in cells, and then that factor X question? Yeah. So it might be good to jot these down so that you don't miss anything. I think it's next week. One of the questions in one of the assignments is always missed because it's at the top and a lot of people don't see it. And then there's a whole list of other questions. So this will help you if you just jot down a list of things to answer. This will help you because it helps keep you organized and it helps make sure that you don't miss anything. With that being said, I hope that you have a wonderful week number 2. There's my name again, Dr. Janie Sigmon, and my email, m.sigmon@snhu.edu. I'll be glad to answer anything, and I'm looking forward to talking with you if you would like to choose a different topic from the ones that I have listed in the course this week. All right, I hope that you have a great week.